So we're in Bava Metzia, the first page, which is Bet Amud Aleph, and we're at the Mishnah, and we're really like, well, I mean, what are we trying? What is it? Well, we'll see Tosfos first. We'll see the Mishnah, and we're interested in what is the din of the Mishnah, and when does the din apply? In what cases? I guess that's really the topic here. When does it apply, and when do we say other? What are other possible dinim that we could have? Um, so let's start with the Mishnah. Um, mm, Maybe Asher, you want to read the Mishnah,
Okay.
or just read some of the Mishnah?
Okay. Oh, it probably helped. I got to the right one.
Wait, but I don't hear you so well. You're
Okay.
kind of quiet.
Okay, so I'll tell you what. 1 second.
How you change your volume of your microphone?
I've got an even better plan.
Well, don't worry about it.
I'll just do it without the microphone, without the headset.
Same. I think it's the same. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, it's still the same. That's strange. Okay, Shnai Machazim Batalit. I thought we read this, didn't we?
Yeah, we did kind of read it last time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can read it quickly.
I'm happy to do it again. Okay, Shnai Machazim Batalit. Ze omer ani mitzatia, v'ze omer ani mitzatia. Two are grabbing onto this garment. One says, I found it. The other says, I found it. Ze omer kula sheli, v'ze omer kula sheli. This one says it's all mine. The other says it's all mine. Ze yishava she'ein lo ba pachot mechetzia, v'ze yishava she'ein lo ba pachot mechetzia. And they both swear that they don't own less than half of it. Vayachaloku. So you split it. Ze omer kula sheli, v'ze omer chetzia sheli. Omer kula sheli yishava she'ein lo ba pachot mikishlosha chalakim. ואומר חצייה שלי ישבה שאין לו בה פחות מרבייה. זה נותר שלושה חלקים וזה נותר רבייה. If one says it's all mine, the other says it's half mine, then the ratios change. The first one swears that he has at least, well, I lost my place, that he owns at least 3/4 of it, and the other says that he owns at least 1/4 of it. So they split it. He gets 75%, he gets 25%.
Good. Wait. Just look at the Rashi there. Shnaim ochazim betalit.
Okay. Hold on. I have to open up my big book for the Rashi. Okay, Rashi. Shnaim ochazim betalit. I did the Arei ben Behagozel.
No. Rashi.
Oh, sorry. דווקא החוזים דשניהם מוחזקים בה, ואין לזה כוח בה יותר מזה, שאילו הייתה ביד אחד לבדו, הרי יידך המוציא מחברו, ועליו להביא ראיה בעדים שהיא שלו, ואינו נאמן זה ליטול בשבועה. So as they were talking, when they're both holding on to it, and neither one of them has more than the other, because if the whole thing had been just in the hands of one of them, then the other one saying it's his would have to bring some kind of proof with witnesses that it's his, and we don't just believe him that he makes some kind of an oath that says half of it's mine.
Right. In other words, in order to get the ability to make an oath, you have to be first ochazim ba, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have some kind of physical claim on it, right? Possession is 9/10 of the law. You can't just go up and say that thing is mine and then make an oath and then get something.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about the word koach, and then also later we're going to see the alim gavar. How much of this is about physical strength? Like, is it literally a tug of war, or
Oh,
like,
exactly.
it also seems to be like this
Well, how would you
language.
translate? How would you translate? How would you like to translate koach?
Well, so I understand Asher's translation, but I was also thinking in leze koach b'yoter mitze. Like, neither of them has more strength than the other, so they're both, the tug of war is stalled. Neither of them can. But maybe it. But I also see the argument for saying it's just, like, neither of them has more of a claim over the other. I'm just wondering, because we've seen this other language about like the rage, and I guess I'm putting a footnote or like a sticky note
Well,
on
we'll
it.
see. We'll
Like,
see that
what is
even
the
called
rage?
the
What is the
alim.
strength?
We'll even see called the alim gavar has a unusual translation by the Rashbam, and
Yeah.
we'll see that. So let's say I would go with Asher's translation that
Okay.
Yeshba koach yoter, he has no better claim. Koach here means power, but it doesn't mean power. It doesn't mean physical power only. It could mean legal
It's
power.
a stronger claim.
Okay.
Ein lezek. This one doesn't have any more power. You'll tear from the other one. Joel, you want to say something?
Just kind of where you were going with it, but I think even when people do talk about physical strength, they have to like start to, I don't remember where I saw this, maybe the Rashbam, maybe somewhere else, like justified of, well, really what it's really about is the person who really owns it wants it more, kind of idea, and will go to further lengths to try and get it, at the end, even if they don't have better proofs. So
Yeah, but that's not
that's
what
another
say.
opinion. Yeah.
Is there a scenario in which called the Alim Bar is like kipshuto? Like
Yeah,
where
well,
it's where because it's funny because we're
the
talking about
Rashbam,
chazaka,
we're gonna see the
and
Rashbam
like,
brings both possibilities.
but it's just like we're using all these words that are all double entendres, right? Chazaka and like, oh, it's just like all of these things. So it's like hard to tell because I feel like it's hard as the reader to think that they're actually going to fight over it, but at the same time, it just seems like that's at least on the shot level of when it comes up in the Gemara, it seems that that's what they're
Well,
talking
I mean,
about.
here we're not fighting over it. In other words, why would in other words, if I'm not holding it, then I don't have koach, and then I need to bring a raya. But if I am holding it, then I don't need to bring a raya. I don't need to bring a proof. So it's hard. So is it because I'm? I mean, we're not going to let these two guys fight it out. We're not going to say. We're not saying here, let them fight it out. We're going to divide it. So koach wouldn't be relevant to say that it's power here, because then the din should be whoever has more power.
Right, but if you're in a situation, if the dean was whoever had more power, that would only apply in a situation in which one had more power. In this case, they specifically do not. Anyway, like
two guys that are exactly two men or women that have the exact same amount of physical strength.
Look, maybe both of them are no good at pulling fountains. I don't know. Whatever. I still
okay.
I
think we're using physical terms to describe legal concepts. He has no legal power. Lexi, you want to say something?
Yeah, I also think that partly this is hinting at part of one of the sources that you gave, where we're also talking later on about like the physical amount that they're holding and things like that, that Rashi, without using the language of the Karkashta here, is talking about the idea that this is being like equally held, basically, that it's not about that we're currently in a tug of war. It's basically just that neither of them has a greater physical claim to it at this moment. Like, I think is the shot of what he's getting at. Just that they are equally holding it. Like, they don't have more power over this at the moment than the other. They're both kind of holding it on the edge.
But again, I really want to stick with the way I'm reading it, which is that we're saying they don't have any greater legal claim than the other. And their claim is based on the idea of possession. Possession itself is a claim. If I'm on a boat, which we're about to see, if I'm on a boat and you're off the boat and I walk over and say, hey, that's my boat, and I say, no, it's my boat, so then we have an unequal claim, because I'm on the boat and I'm claiming it's mine, and you're off the boat and claiming it's yours. You have no, I mean, maybe not just on it, maybe I'm holding the steering wheel. So I have a better claim because I'm holding it. So there is a possibility, or another guy, for example, would be coming in with the talit holding it, and the other guy would be saying, I'm not holding it, but it's mine. So we would view the claim differently than if he's holding it. And the Gemara actually later even goes on to talk about, well, what about a case where he's just like, one is holding it and the other is just like holding a fringe. He's just holding like a tzitzit that's hanging off. Does that count as a claim? In other words, it's not a question of physical strength. Maybe he could pull it with those tzitzit. Maybe he's very strong and he could grab that little fringe and pull the whole thing out of the other guy's hand. But we're saying no. When one guy's holding it fully and the other guy's just holding the fringe, that is not an indicator that that the second guy is really holding it at all. So it's really a question of a legal possession. Like we say in English, possession is 9/10 of the law. So you have to possess a claim on its own. I can't say, hey, that Brooklyn Bridge, that's mine. I have to have some physical possession of the thing and a claim. And that's exactly what Rashi's point is. Even if he makes a shvua, we won't let him take anything. Even if he swears that talus is mine, if he's not holding it, we won't let him even swear, because we wouldn't execute any judgment based on that oath, because he doesn't have to. He has to start off with some kind of actual claim. In other words, physical claim or some kind of visible claim, and not just words. Okay. Anyway, that's how I'm nailing this question down to one reading. Okay, so let's since we did see the Mishnah a lot, let us look straight away at the second Tosfot. That's the Tosfot that I'm mostly interested in, and Eliezer, maybe you want to read?
And by second Tosfot, you mean second Tosfot of this particular Mishnah?
Second Tosfot of the page in Bava Metzia Daf Bet. It starts Vayachloku.
We did not. We spent a lot of time on the Tosfot on the source. We've not got to that, so I'm not at this point prepared.
Okay.
To try.
You spent a lot of time. What did you say on the first Tosfot?
On the Lamed Daled Amud Bet from.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, we'll get to Lamed Daled. Fine, we'll get to Lamed Daled.
Okay.
We're just going to start the Tosfot and then jump to Lamed Daled. So we're not going to read the whole Tosfot right away. Maybe Jessica, you want to read it? We're not going to read. I guarantee you, we're not going to read more than a quarter of it until we get to Lamed Daled. Go ahead, Jessica. You'd rather. Okay, Jessica, you're okay. So let's try Yavni.
Okay. Wait, the Vayachloku, that Tosfot is that what you said?
Yeah.
Vayachloku. Tema demaishna miahi da'arava da'amal kol dalim gavar. So the ruling that we say they split it is surprising, because it seems like it's a very similar case to the case on the other page where we're talking about the boat, and in that case the ruling was kol dalim gavar. Whoever has the stronger hand gets it, I guess.
Right. In other words, here, Tosfot is suggesting, why are here we saying that you divide it, and there we didn't say divide the boat. We said whoever is stronger gets it, or whoever has called the alim, which alim is like who's more
Strength, right?
Violent even. Alimut in modern Hebrew means violence.
But I don't think in the Aramaic it has that same connotation. I think the Kol Dalim really is whoever is more powerful.
Yeah, okay. I'll go with you.
Definitely.
I said in modern Hebrew. I just said in modern Hebrew. But yeah, it's alim.
Jastro gives it his rage, and so does Frank.
Okay, but let's go with the. Well, we'll see what it is.
It's a metaphor. I understand it's not literal. I'm just saying.
Yeah, let's go with stronger.
Strength and whatever.
Yeah, let's go with stronger, and whatever stronger means. Stronger might mean different things, but whoever is stronger win. Gavar from the gaber to he wins.
Triumphs.
He is triumphs. Yeah, good translation. He triumphs. And
Right.
so read the beginning of his answer.
ויש לומר דאוחזין שנה, דחשיב כאילו כל אחד יש לו בה בוודאי החצי, דאנן סהדי דמאי דתפיס, היידידהו. So we could say, so one can say that that it's different when you're physically holding it, because it's as if it's as if each of them surely has the half that we're giving them, because we are witnesses ourselves that what they are holding in their hand, that is theirs in this moment.
Right. Right. Anan Sahadi is this that we pronounce, we are acting as his witnesses for him, that that the part that he's holding is, or at least Hachetzi, actually. See, this is a big question. I gave you that source that says, well, what if he's the halacha in the end is that you get part that you're holding, and the other guy gets the part that he's holding, and whatever in the middle you divide by half. But that's in other words, that's the halacha in the end, but we didn't get there yet. And at this point, I think
We
we're
saw that in the Tosefta, though, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think the Gemara here is under. I don't think the Tosfos is here understanding it that way. Whatever he's, I mean, we could be understanding it that way, but let's just say simply that the Chetzi, we don't care how much he's holding, he gets Chetzi. In other words, the simple reading of the Mishnah would be that he holds a quarter and he holds a third, and they divide in the middle. Because we're not being precise, we're not going to measure exactly how much each one is holding. We're just going to sort of divide in the middle. So when he says Hachetzi, I mean, you could also say that the chetzi that he's talking about is the chetzi that is the ungrabbed chetzi of what is left, of what is ungrabbed, then half of that. But in any case, so since he's holding it, we say that he gets the chetzi, the tafis that he's holding, and that's his, and therefore we're not going to say called the alim gavar. So let's go look at that Tosfot, at that Gemara. So that's Baba Batra Lamed Dal Amud Bet. Let's go there. And maybe Eliezer, you do want to read now.
Sure, yeah, no problem. 1 second. Okay. Pahu arba dehavu minsu Allah betre. Hi Amar didehi, v'hai Amar didehi. Atachad minayu lebeidina, v'amar tifsuha adamaitina sahade didihi, tafsinan olo tafsinan. Rav Huna Amar tafsinan. Rav Yehuda Amar la tafsinan. So there were two people that were fighting over ownership of a boat. One said that one is mine. One said that it's mine. The other said that it's mine. One of them went to the Beit Din and say, "Can you take possession of this until I bring proof that it is indeed mine?" The Gemara asks, "Do we take it or do we not take it?" Rav Huna holds that we do take it. And Rav Yehuda says we don't take it into our possession of the Besdin.
Right. Okay. So first of all, where are these people standing when they're saying this?
I guess in front of the boat.
Right. And they're not on the boat. They're not holding ropes of the boat. They're away from the boat. They're next to the boat. They're on the dock or something. And in fact, they're walking over to. Now, why does he want the guy to take the boat? Why does he want the Beit Din to possess the boat?
Because he wants to bring proof.
What's he afraid will happen in the meantime?
perhaps that the other guy will just go off with it. He'll board the boat and then sail away with it. So he wants a third party to come and take possession. So this way, it's sort of like an escrow until they can sort things out.
Well, look at Rashba Tafsuha. Penyim Karena. He's afraid that he'll sell the boat. Aval Hazaka Zikba. But if he would just take the boat and start using it, let's say, I mean, you're right, maybe sailing away would be a problematic case also. But if he would just start using it up and down the river, and start using it, ain't no klum. That hazaka is no klum, even though he's actually possessing it, he's using it. Why? The anan sahati, because we testify shebetorat chatifa baliyadav. We say that he is illegitimately taking it because this guy basically came to Beit Din and registered that he complains. He says that it's his before anybody has possessed it. So a possession after the fact wouldn't have any effect because he sort of registered with the Beit Din that I officially object and say it's mine. But if he would sell it, then maybe that. I mean, what's we can't necessarily undo that selling because maybe the guy will go off with it. Or did Lexi?
Yeah, I think the main issue ends up being kind of like a practical one. If he's like worried that it'll end up kind of being sold or even like the literal sailing off with it, right? That like physically I will no longer be able to claim this. Not that he will suddenly have greater legal legitimacy, but just like it will not be possible for me to regain it.
Right. But I think a point I wanted to say is that you see here that hazaka doesn't work. I mean, this is what I'm interested in. When does hazaka work? When does it not work? And when is possession 9/10 of the law? All these questions of how to determine ownership and partial ownership. And here you see that by simply registering with the Beit Din an objection, you deny other people the ability to claim a chazaka on it. If it hasn't been already muhzak.
That is no different than someone coming into my house and picking something up and taking it out. And that there is, I don't think any of us had a havamina that like holding on to something means that it's actually yours. No, it's meaning if people know if there's an anan sahade that people that this belongs to me, I don't think all of a sudden you can now start from scratch, have to bring it to
that's exactly. But if you come into my house and take something and walk out and claim it's yours and you didn't, in other words, I would have to have some kind of proof that it was in my house at some point. It doesn't. I do actually have to. I have to. So in this case of the boat, if I wouldn't go to the Beit Din and he just got on and started using it, so then I have no proof that I have no deed of ownership, and he's using it. Well, then he really does have a claim. Unless I went to Beit Din and registered it. All right. Anyway, whatever.
In a boat in terms of like the actual object. Like I feel like a talit is the paradigmatic last thing a poor person has, even the shirt off their back. And so I'd expect maybe that to affect the din and how lenient we are in terms.
Can somebody tell me? I didn't understand, Jessica. I couldn't hear you so well. The sound. Maybe you'll write it as a comment. I didn't quite hear what you're saying. You're saying about something about a poor person and the shirt off his back. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to take shirts off people's back. I mean, I don't know what you mean.
I mean, that seems to be one of the fears of the Beit Din, right? That's also in the Rashbam as to why they wouldn't take it would be that they're afraid of that they are taking it from the actual owner and that it's going to be stuck with the Beit Din forever. And they've now removed property from somebody, which is also a huge concern at the same time, right? The competing claim, I guess, or the competing concern with this whole thing.
And yet, Bati Din, throughout halacha, we don't seem to have any reticence on their part to expropriate property because there's a lien on it. There's something else going on. There's some other action on whatever it is you're fighting over to say, well, I'm sorry, we're going to invalidate that sale. You sold this property and you can't, and now that person is out of luck, and now there has to be reimbursement, and there's all kinds of accounting that goes on. But nonetheless, the Beit Din doesn't seem to, it's not unheard of for this type of thing to say, you know what, this was an error. You shouldn't have done this, and you have to reimburse so and so, and it belongs to him or her.
No, but the whole point is that that's when we do have some proofs, right? The Batei Din, we say like we have cases where the Beit Din can expropriate property when there are documents, when there is proof of ownership, when there are liens, when there are all of these things. And so the Beit Din, it's not that they're shy about using their power when there is like clear legal reason to expropriate things. It's that they're like wary when there is no clear legal proof of ownership or whatever to exercise their power in a way that might just end up being wrong. It might just end up being them expropriating it from somebody who fully owns the thing that they have, that is not taking it for a lien or anything like that. They would just be taking it away.
Right. I mean, Alexi's quite right. These are cases like the Mishnah is talking about Metzia, because a Metzia is something sort of by definition that you have no deed or bill of sale, right? You're not even claiming you bought it. You're claiming you found it. So the only proof is in possession. The only proof of ownership is by possession. And this boat here, we're assuming also is a case where there's no deed. If there would be a deed, then we would look at that deed, But there's obviously the only claim is their words, and they're not actually possessing it in any kind of way.
Are there other cases where the Beit Din takes possession themselves of something, right? Like holds something?
Well, there are places, right? There's a case that I brought where you wait for Eliyahu Hanavi sometimes.
Right, but even that it says like it just like remains where it is. This one feels a little different to me, that it's like
well,
the Beit Din.
wait, so I've sort of lost track. So let's go back to the case. So we have the case of the boat, and they asked this question: should the Beit Din tafsinan? Should they hold it for this guy so that it shouldn't be sold or drawn off with, or low? And then we said that Rav Huna said tafsinan, and Rav Yehuda said lo tafsinan. Okay, now go on. Continue on.
Okay. Azal velo ashkach sahade. He went and didn't find any witnesses. Amar laho afkuha v'chol de'alim kvar. So he says, all right, you know what, just let it. I want you to, I'm the one that put it in your escrow, but I'm actually saying, let's forget about that. I couldn't find any witnesses. And then anyone who overpowers wins. Again, still, I guess we're still figuring out what that exactly means.
Here, so look at Rashbam right there. Look at Rashbam right there, called the Alim Gavar, which is his suggestion.
Okay.
Read the Rashbam there.
1 second. Bein berayot, bein bekoach, kmo sheposek Rab Nachman lefanenu kol da'alim kvar. Whether by proof or by actual brute force, just as Rab Nachman Haskins before us,
right?
Called da'alim kvar.
So, I mean, right. He could, in other words, called the Alim Gavar doesn't necessarily mean, says the Rashba, by power. It also means by bringing proofs. By bringing proofs. I'm now Alim in din. I have more cause.
I wonder to whom. To whom?
What does that mean at that point? Like we've said we don't have anything to bring the Beit Din, so the Beit Din should release it. What rayot? Like what is the rayot at that point? Is that like?
What do you mean? What rayot would we potentially bring?
Or yeah, I mean, we've just said that, and why are you getting the Beit Din to release it before bringing the rayot? Like, if you're bringing rayot, for any sort of rayot that you can bring a Beit Din, then shouldn't that be the Beit Din who's making the decision, or is this something like we'll argue it out between ourselves?
In other words, if one of the valid options is to say you're asking if one of the valid options is to say let's say we're going to bring witnesses. Well, that might take some time. So Beit Din, why don't you keep holding it until we bring until we find proof, until we find some kind of rayot, bein rayot. I have some kind of proof that a deed of sale or something. Why don't we continue tofes it? What does it mean to release it?
Right.
Alexi,
you just said we don't have the rayot.
Because he's saying release it because we have no proof. We have no way of deciding who's right.
No, but the Rashba says potentially you could bring proof, and then you would get it.
So there
Right,
are
but
some
Even,
of
and
the
that's
what
called
happens
called
if
the
you
alim
release it in
gavar.
the meantime?
there are some Rishonim who suggest that the Kol Alim Gavar with Rayot is referring to Rayot that would, under normal circumstances, not be fully sufficient if there was any kind of like other competing claims. But once we enter this state of like whoever can win, if you have like kind of a raya, even if it's not like a fully fleshed one that we would usually consider like sufficiently legitimate, then potentially that wins. That's like one of the suggestions. But I think also it could
Right.
be getting at the idea. We see this also with the Rav Nachman thing we're about to get, that the Kol Alim Gavar is perceived by a lot of the Rishonim as like a siluk min hadin from the Beit Din,
Right.
like, and but also with this knowledge that there is the potential that like later on more information will come to light, right? So essentially like release it, let what happens right now, and if like one of us then later is able to bring witnesses, they could then the Beit Din could intervene again, right? That like we say, let it be what it is for now, and if we later find more proof, then we can actually make a judgment.
So that raises question.
Okay, but I still want to stick. I didn't
What is it?
see any Rishonim or Achronim that said that. Maybe I'd be happy to see them, but I would rather stick with just the simple shot that rayot means legitimate rayot, not illegitimate rayot.
Then what does it mean to release
And
them?
that's so they're legitimate rayot. And so what is the pronouncement then? And I would
Rav-
suggest that the
Rav Nachman,
pronouncement.
what does it mean to
yes,
release?
Asher.
What does it mean to release it then? We release it, that means we're no longer responsible, or we're releasing it to whoever has the stronger rayot in whatever circumstances. What does it mean to release?
Exactly, that was my question.
Okay, right, but that's what we're still not. I'm still.
I was about to. I was trying to answer it, but maybe I don't know a good answer. Aaron, what do you want to say?
Sorry, I'll shut up then.
Just as Lexi said from later in the sugya where it says Hacha Ikel Mekam Ala de Milta, it makes it seem like the rayot, you're not really the Kol Alim Gvar. The two ways of reading it either Kol Alim Gvar is before rayot, and once you have rayot, unlike the Rashbam would say, then you've moved out of Kol Alim Gvar, but you start with Kol Alim Gvar, or Kol Alim Gvar is a situation in which you start with some sort of non-rayot koach, but which may turn into a situation of rayot koach. But in any case, it doesn't seem like the Beit Din is releasing it to a particular person. They're releasing it, and then if there were a particular person that they could release it to, we wouldn't be in a situation of kol da'alim gvar. The kol da'alim gvar comes after they release it.
Right. Well, and again, remember, this is a suggestion of this guy. This guy is suggesting that we release it, and he says, he says, we'll figure it out between us.
Right.
Which we'll figure it out between us. However, we figure it out either with rayot or with physicality, whatever. We'll work it out between us. And I think what people have been saying, I think, is the right direction, which is really the point I want to get to, which is that the question is whether the Beit Din is going to don in this question at all. In other words, Beit Din, it's kind of like the Supreme Court. Supreme Court doesn't necessarily judge every case that comes before it. They say, we're not going to deal with this question. So when they say kol alim kavar, what it's actually saying is, this is not a case for us to get to involve ourselves with. There's not all cases are, you could almost say like, it's not the interest of the community to judge this, but we don't want to get involved in this case. We as a Beit Din are not going to get involved. We're going to let them. If they come later with proofs and they want to come back, that's fine. But at the current moment, we're not going to get involved in this case. That is what kol alim gavar in the end means, because they're saying, I release it to you guys to figure out, and I'm not going to figure it out. So it's kind of a legal statement again that's saying it is not a judgeable case. That's what I think is the best way to express it. It's a non-judgeable case because we don't have any proofs, and you just have one claim against another, no chazaka, no nothing. So it's not judgeable. We can't make a judgment. And then the question is exactly why, and I have an idea about that too. Well, let's get there. Okay.
I have is this, when you talk about judge by vibes, we have in 3 lines, Shuda de Dayaning.
I didn't say judge by vibes.
You just
I said
either...
whether we're willing to judge the case or we're not willing to judge it.
Okay.
I didn't say we judge by vibes. I said we there's certain cases that are not judgeable. And this is one of those cases. So therefore, the way we say that is called alim gavar. We let the litigants deal with it. We don't want to get involved. It would just, I mean, I could give reasons why, but I don't want to yet. At the moment, we just say, for some reason, we don't want to get involved. I mean, I said the simplest, the most straightforward thing to say is because we don't have any proofs here. There's nothing legal here to grasp on because they're not grasping on it. Because right, because they're not holding it. They're not. There's no chazaka. There's no proofs. There's no nothing. We're releasing that's what he's suggesting. This guy, and so now we ask the question in the Gemara. So go on, Eliezer.
Okay. Rav Papa Amar, Mavkina. Ve'ilchata lo tafsina. The lacha is that we try not to take it in the first place. But in the context in where we already took it into our possession, then we should not let it go.
So wait, so we have this machloket between Rav Yehuda and Rav Papa. Rav Yehuda says, if you did take it, now of course, why did you take it? That's another question the Rashba answers. Why did we take it?
I mean, I think we have to say in the Mahalach of the Sugya that in this scenario, they ended up doing what the guy had asked, but that, like, in retrospect, we end up saying they shouldn't have.
Just a second.
Halacha is like Rav Yehuda in both machlokot.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, I remember there was an explanation of why we took it. I'm trying to see that. I don't remember it right now.
I mean, presumably, again, like in this case, we're talking about the Beit Din acceding to the guy's request where he said to seize it because he was worried the other guy is going to sell it, right? And so presumably in general, we say like, okay, we end up poskening some number of generations later that like, because there are opinions either way. So up until that point, you can see Batei Din had like Mashal Yismoch Alav to do either, right? And now we end up saying we don't think you should get involved in the first place, but like if you didn't know that and now suddenly you grabbed this ship and you're trying to desperately look for what you're supposed to do now, the answer is that like you can't do anything with it.
Okay, I don't quite remember the answer, but that's obviously a possible thing to say. That's not what I think I was trying to say, but that's definitely, you could say, it was a mistake. But in any case, Rav Yehuda says lo tafsinan. Sorry. Rav Huna Amar tafsinan. Rav Yehuda says lo tafsinan. You don't take it. Sorry.
Mafkinan.
Sorry. Mafkinan. Lo mafkinan. Rav Yehuda Omer lo mafkinan. Rav Papa Amar mafkinan. V'hilchata lo tafsinan. You shouldn't take it. V'hekat tafas. Lo mafkinan. So you shouldn't take it. So that's where I was asking. What is this hecha de tafas?
Right. That's just what Lexi was. I mean, there's always situations where there's like a gray area, and then arbitrators find themselves in a context where, in retrospect, it might have not been best to become involved, but now they are.
Okay.
So what do you do?
So why don't they? So Amar lo mafkinan. Rav Papa Amar mafkinan v'hilchata lo tafsinan. We don't take it, which means my explanation is we don't take it, we don't get involved in this case. There's no proofs here. We're not going to take it because the tafas lo mafkinan. We're not going to release it. Why don't we release it? We don't have any. Why should we not? Why we should release it? If we're saying that we shouldn't have taken it, then if we did take it, let's release it. Because we should. Why shouldn't we have taken it? Because we have no business dealing with this case because there's no proofs involved. So why are we going to mafkin it? Why should we mafkin it? Because we don't want to get involved with it. So on this, I think there's a Rashba. So let's see. Hilchata. Well, I don't, somehow it disappeared on me, these Rashbas. But I think the explanation is that that once maybe it's a Tosfos that says it, once we have taken this ship into our possession, if we release it, then we're getting involved. We're essentially, we have no right to get involved. We're allowing somebody to take something that maybe is not really his. So we are getting involved. Once we've taken it, we're sort of stuck. We're stuck with it. Because if we release it, that's like tantamount to us getting involved. We're helping one side or another. Maybe one side is more physically strong or has better rayot at that moment. So we've made ourselves, whether we wanted to or not, we've made ourselves involved. We can't uninvolve ourselves. Once we've become entangled in this case, we can't release it because that would be giving an advantage to one side or the other. Yeah.
I mean, I think that just backs also the flow of the sugya, where you have the same party making both of these requests in terms of they are requesting first that the Beit Din sees it because they think that it's going to be advantageous. When it turns out that doesn't actually go the way they want, then they want to kind of back out of that approach, for the Beit Din to kind of go first in direction A, then in direction B at one party's bidding, definitely puts the second party in a much less advantageous position here.
There's if one guy's calling all the shots. He's deciding when to take it, when to release it. Yeah, that's certainly. But I'm just interested also in what the Beit Din, in other words, if like I was saying, if their approach is we don't want to get involved, then all the more so I should release it. So I'm saying by releasing it, you're actually being involved.
I also intuitively to me, it seems that it would really weaken the power of the Beit Din. Like if they give it out, it looks like kind of like they don't have it in their hands. Then that's how I would feel. I think.
What do you say? Say it again. It's not in their hand.
No, yeah, that's. I think it weakens the power of the Beit Din, the authority of the Beit Din. If they take it and then they release it and then they watch.
It makes them look foolish.
Everybody, as people, basically try to solve the situation themselves without the Beit Din, because that's what happens if they are mafkin if they give it out. So I think that then the Beit Din seems pretty not useless altogether, but I think it weakens its authority, kind of.
Oh, here, wait, Alex, why don't you read this beginning of this Tosfos here?
Okay, so I have to get there. So
this
which
is
one?
Vahu Arba in Bava Batra.
Okay, I'll get there. Wait. So. What is it? Yeah, I'm online, but I should be able to find it. Okay. Right? That's it.
Yeah.
Hadin kol de alim davar.
So first of all, he says psak. He says the din of Hahu Arba is called the alim gavar. How do you see that from the case? Because how do you see that from the case? In other words, first of all, he's telling you what the din is. From that hilchata lo tafsinan. So we're not. So what does it mean lo tafsinan? Lo tafsinan, but maybe we. So that means we're not getting involved. So that means called the alim gavar. It's not a judgeable case.
Okay, ve'im tomar Mishna, Mishneim ochzim betalit, de amar pereish Bava Metzia, de yachloku. Okay, so how is it different from the case in Bava Metzia? Because there we say yachloku, umefaresh Rabbeinu tam de ochzin shanei. So the case is different in Shnei ochzin betalit, says Rabbeinu tam, de kevan sheshnehem muchzakim, en lanu lehaniach sheyigzol ha'echad lechavero. Because both of them have kind of chazaka, they perform a behavior of ownership. I would say they come and hold it. That's
exactly
ownership. Because we so then we really don't we don't
how is it gezela? They're both holding it. Right. Why is it gezela? What am I stealing? Well, let's keep reading.
Okay. So we know that like they express their ownership. So we know that each of them has a part in it, has a part of that claim. Their claims are equal.
Yes, the claims are equal. They both have a possession of some of this thing. And if we would say called the alim gavar, then one would be taking from the other, and yet that would be stealing because they have an actual right to it. Yeah, go ahead.
So שכל דבר שיש להעמיד בחזקת מי שהוא בידו, דאמרינן גבי ניסחא דרבי אבא. Because like there's a chazaka that if somebody holds the object, that it's his. As we learned from the Naskha de Rabbi Abba, I haven't seen the case, but unfortunately,
case of like a piece of silver metal that he owned. Yeah.
The af al gav de amar didi chatvi chashvinan lei gazlan. Because even though he said it's mine, or I took what is mine, we consider him a thief.
Right. So that is the Gemara. We don't have to look there right now. You see, this is like you can go back now. This is like find that case, but that case is a page before, and that case is saying you can't make an oath if the guy says I took my own thing. You were holding this piece of silver and I grabbed it from you. It's true I grabbed it from you, but it was mine. So now can I swear that it's mine? And the Gemara says you can't swear that it's yours because you're not a valid oath taker because you're a gazlan. We don't let gazlanim take. But wait a second. He claims he's not a gazlan. He claims it was his thing. So Tosfot, you see what I'm saying? He claims it's his. So why is he calling him a gazlan? The Gemara, wait, Lexi, you want to interrupt?
Yeah, I don't think it's about I don't think it's so much about this person being a gazlan now can't take a shvua. It's that that would be gezel, right? That it's more about the proof of why we can't allow kol da'alim gavar in the case when there are shnaim ochzin is because the nischad Rabbi Ava is being used just to prove their claim that when people are holding things, in the absence of other concrete proof, we consider it to be theirs. Right. So in this case, for example, the one that he's referring to, this one guy is holding the silver, is in possession of that silver. Maybe not literally.
But I was still in the middle of giving the background. Let me get there. You see, I'm in the middle of giving the background to the case, and then I'm going to get to the point that you're trying to make. You don't need to. Just let me finish my idea, and then you'll see what I'm trying to say. I was in the middle of trying to say it. So the case is that he's holding this piece of silver, and he takes it from this other guy, and so. The other guy says, so he says, but I took it was mine. So you might say that he's not a gazlan because he's taking his own thing. And he doesn't claim to be a gazlan. But the Gemara says, no, he admitted now to be a gazlan. What are you saying? I didn't admit to be a gazlan. I was taking my own thing. I never said I was a gazlan. The Gemara says, no, you were a gazlan, and that's why you can't make an oath. So from this, Rabbeinu Tam makes a very clever proof, I think. He's saying, based on this, he's saying, the Gemara is calling you a gazlan you see from that the owner of it, sorry, not the owner, the possessor of it, the guy holding it, had some kind of claim to it. And the fact that you took it, even though you claimed it's yours, calls you a gazlan. That means that possession is 9/10 of the law. And that is where actually what Rabbeinu Tam should have said is hamotzi mechaver al varaya. That's exactly the same point, right? You can't just take something from somebody. You have to have a raya. Literally, hamotzi mechavero al varaya. You can't just grab something, even if you say it's yours. You need to have a raya. You have a proof. So actually, what Rabbeinu Tam is being extra clever, and he's saying, I'm going to use the Gemara that we just learned a page and a half ago to prove that concept, to prove the concept of hamotzi mechaver al varaya. What's the source for it? It's from this case of the nascha of the Naskha of Rabbi, what was it?
Rabbi Abba.
Of Rav Abba. So from that case, he's able to prove that possession is 9/10 of the law. That the fact that he was holding it means that even though I claim it's mine, by my taking it, I've caused myself to become a ganav. So that's why here in our case of the Shnayim Ochazim B'Talit, two people holding something, I can't say called alim gavar, because that would imply that whatever violence or whatever proofs whatever they do on their own, well, let's say violence perhaps that they do is legitimate, but it's not legitimate. One of them is going to be a ganaf, or potentially. Does that agree with what you were trying to say, Lexi? Yeah. Okay. So that's Rabbeinu Tam's, I think, clever proof to the idea of Motzi Mechaber al Varaya. Right, so continue on, from where we were. So wait a second. So you understand? So that's what he's saying that's why the Arba is different. Sorry. That's why the Arba is different, because the Arba, nobody's holding it. Nobody's grabbing onto that boat. So that's why we say called alim. Now, it's a case where we can legitimately not get involved because there's no claim. But in a case where it's Shnayim Ochazim, us as a base didn't have to get involved because maybe somebody will be a thief. We can't allow that. All right, so continue.
Okay. והדמדמה אלי, התם טלית לשער, יהיה מונח עד שיבוא אליהו, אף על גב דבשער, דהתם אין שום אחד מוחזק. So, why to compare these cases, the talis and the agra, the boat?
Wait, so what's this case of shar? This is case of shar. That's another case that I gave you.
Okay.
So wait a second.
So it's not about the case of the.
Sorry, I'm just catching up.
Is this when there was like a difference, like there was the 200 picadon and the 100 picadon, and and they both claim the 200 one, so there's the statement that each one gets 100, and then the sha'ar, i.e. the remaining half of the 200 is
right. That's the case of the shar. The shar is that somebody, we have to see that though. The case is where somebody took somebody collected, people were mafkid at slow. They deposited by him. One person deposited 100, another person deposited 200. And there, what we say, and they both come and say, I was the one who deposited the 200. And so the din is that they each get one of their hundreds, but the extra 100 is, we don't say called the alin gavar, and we don't say yachloku. We say a third possibility, which is that we keep it. That the guy the picadon is at slow, we keeps it until proofs are brought. In other words, until Eliyahu Hanavi comes. We don't release it and let them fight over it. So why is that? L'chora, nobody's holding it. Nobody's holding it, right? The two guys who claim it's theirs are not holding it. The two, so it should be like a case of a talent. They're not hold. I mean, no, it should be a case like the Arbet, where we do, or like the boat, where we let them fight over it because they're not holding it. So we have to bring in another principle to answer that. But I think did we skip something in the middle there? Had medame leila hatam talit lishar. Ah, right. So the Gemara there compares a talit lishar, and that we don't understand. Afagav de bishar the hatam ain't shum echad muvzak. Nobody is actually holding it. The two people at least are not holding it. So Richlomar dishar nami chashiv lehu keilu shneihem muvzakim. So he says, no. They are both holding it. Sorry, when it said, so if you want to go back, what it says, hatam before, it meant on Daf Gimel Amar Aleph, where the Gemara itself compares talit to the shar case. But in any case, so it says it would be an illegitimate comparison. So he says, but when they put it in, when they were mafkid it by somebody, hatam the ein shum echad muzakwa. Tzrik lomar the shar nami chachiv lehu keilu shneihem muzsakim bo kevan de mekoach shneihem nifkan. Since both of them gave from their own power, they put it into the hands of the banker, the person who, or the I don't know what you would call it, the person who holds money for people. They put it there, and he's sort of acting as their agent, right? He's their agent. He's holding their money for them. So he's their yad. He's an extension of those two people. So even though they are physically not holding it, they are holding it through an agent of a, like, I don't even want to call it a shliach, or they're holding it in some sense because
may I just ask about the lashon, because I feel like we're just sort of going back and forth between machzak being a physical action versus being having a chazaka, and I feel like
here
because again, like
it's physical possession, it's possessing it,
but
possessing it physically, holding it in some way
means made. It's hufal, so it's made to be someone of a baal chazaka, like made to do. So it's that they are both made to have a chazaka through this, because again,
I would translate it as they are considered muchzakim bo. They are considered as though they are, but I want to say literally, they have a chazaka. You want to call it a chazaka? A chazaka comes from the word,
I know, but I'm saying, but
they're connected.
We're also, I understand that, but I'm also just thinking back to that first Rashi. It said ochzin, and then it said o muchzakim ba, right? So the question was physically holding on or to be muchzak on it. And so that's what I was saying before, that there's like the precision with the words of what we're actually talking about, because the question here is, we assume that holding it gives you a chazaka, but this is just saying that there are other things that give you a chazaka, perhaps by the extension of the original core of the word. But chazaka, obviously in lashon chazal, lashon chachamim, already has been extended to not just mean but still, a physical hold. So they're not concerned about that.
I agree with you. The word here could mean muchzakim in the sense that they have some kind of chazaka on it, but it's not a chazaka in the sense. You see, a lot of times you talk about like land. If you're there for 3 years, then you have a chazaka on the land. If you claim you bought it, you don't have to have the deed anymore. And there you're not holding it, but you have a chazaka on the land, even though you're not physically holding it. But here we're trying to explain that this money, in other words, you might, Rabbeinu Tam is basically asking, why do we consider it that they have a chazaka, even if you want to say it like that, a chazaka on the money when it's not in their possession? And his answer is because they deposit it with this guy, so it's keilu shneihem muchzakim bo mikoach shneihem nifkad, because they use their intent, or their, I could translate the word koach, but I would translate, this mikoach shneihem, that from their power, from their intent, it is by this person. So it's as though they are still having a hazaka on it. So, however you want to translate the word hazaka, I think the simplest way to say is as though they possess it. Yavni?
Yeah, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Rabbi Eliezer, I think this is what you were saying, was another way to put it would be that it's a question of what is the object of the verb, right? So it's not a statement that they are holding something, it is a statement that we are holding them as the possessors of it. That's why it says they are muchzakim, is like, what does it mean they have a chazaka on it? It means, like, more precisely, they are held to be the possessors of it.
I think
that what you meant?
I think it's
disagree.
talking.
And just in modern Hebrew, shnehem muchzakim bo, they are. I don't know.
As opposed to shnehem machzikim bo. Is that what you were saying?
I have to say the linguistics.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
The linguistics of it are. I'm willing to be modeh. It doesn't really bother me either way. It's not relevant. The linguistics in this case are not relevant. The point is in this case that they are considered to have a chazaka on the money, even though it is not physically in their possession. That is the point. However you want to translate the word chazaka is irrelevant. The point is that he's trying to say that they have possession of it, even though they don't have possession of it, right? They don't have possession of it. If they can't give it to anybody, it's not in their possession. But we consider it as though it is in their possession because this guy is their agent. That's all he's saying. However you want to translate
it's fine, but I think that the question that they're asking comes from an assumption about what provides chazaka. So if there's one paradigm that provides chazaka, which is physical possession, and they're saying actually there's other types of things that provide chazaka regarding potential ownership, and one of those other things is other types of power, like the power of being mafkid something by someone.
Who possesses it right now?
I don't think it. I think it logically has to be about the physical act of holding it. Otherwise, they wouldn't need to explain why this scenario is
exactly.
And the fact that they say ke'ilu, right? If they were actually, if it's that the fact that they were depositing it makes them muchazakin, then you wouldn't have to say ke'ilu. It's the ke'ilu means that it's as if they're physically holding it, but otherwise you wouldn't have any.
No, but I don't think actually it seems to me that like we consider both of them like potentially both of them can be legitimate honors, like so they are like ke'ilu shnehem muchazakin, like we kind of like both of them can be in fact legitimate honors, and they are, I mean, why?
Yeah, and you got to stick with the word possession. You got to stick with the word possession. We are trying to establish what makes a hazaka. Hazaka, we all
but what makes the
as a conclusion, as a din that comes out at the end. But now we're investigating what actions cause a hazaka. And so one of the actions that causes hazaka is possession.
Also,
and that's
but
what we're discussing here.
Yeah, but in this case, it's just their behavior. Like they were like both of them. It's not a person from the street. The other guy, it's a person who gave his money. In fact, like everybody agrees that they gave their money to this banker. Let's call him banker, and that they behave in a way how conventionally, like I mean, people.
Yes, the guy is definitely a banker. I don't see if it would be. I don't see any difference. If the guy would be a random person on the street, it would also be the same din. I don't know if there's any difference.
I don't know if it would be the same din.
I have what basis do you have
I would
to
see a difference. I think there's a difference because, like,
but do you have any Gemara that tells you there's a difference? Do you have any Tosfot that says there's a difference?
No, I don't.
So we don't have any. We can't just make up our own theories. It doesn't say that this because he is a known entity, a person who has worked in the field of receiving deposits in the past. That's why this works. It doesn't say that. It just says he is we're mafki. It could be my friend. It could be I gave it to a friend of mine, and he gave it to his same friend. There's two people have a friend, a mutual friend, and they give it to him. It doesn't have to be any particular person. And exactly the point is that Rabbeinu Tam went out of his way to say that by the tzitzit, by the talis, the guy is actually holding it, and the boat he's not actually holding it. And then he's saying, well, in this case, he's not actually holding it. Somebody else is holding it. And he says, no, it's as if he's actually holding it because he gave it to him and for the purpose of holding it for me. He said, hey, hold this money for me. So he is now acting as a shliach. So we're talking about what creates hazaka, and that is by holding. There are other ways to create hazakas too, but that's not what we're talking about now. And nobody suggested that he lived in the money for 3 years and then became possessor of it. Nobody suggested that he did any other action to possess it. The way he possessed it was by holding it, and yet here he's not holding it. Somebody else is holding it. Well, that's ke'ilu, as Aaron said, right? That it's ke'ilu, he's holding it because somebody else is holding it for him. That's all it is. But again, it's all not that important. The point is that there is hazaka even though there's no holding. And by the boat, there is no hazaka because there's no holding.
The last note, I think also from the way that from the objection of the Riva, where he says it's lav davka ochzin, it indicates that Rabbeinu Tam, we're talking davka ochzin.
That's true also. Yes, that's also true. But actually, I don't want to do the
Riva. Ochzin is a stand-in for the word ochzin bitalit, not holding. It's it's ochzin versus shar, which are two words. One is referring to one case, and shar is referring to the other case. Not
with the Rivam, he means actually ochzin. The Rivam is not just talking about the talit. The Rivam is talking about how he thinks you can do yachloku even when you're not physically holding something.
Right. That's why it says davka ochzin. He's not saying davka ochzin the case of ochzin. He's saying davka ochzin the act of holding it.
Makes sense.
Right. All right. Let's take a break here, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. In this Bava Batra, and in the Rashba particularly. Are we all back? Maybe Joel, you'll read a little bit from the next two dots.
Sure. All right. Zeomer shel avotai v'zeomer shel avotai. So each one claims that they're inheriting something from their father, right? It could be, as Rashbam puts it.
Yes. Yeah, just jump in and read the Rashba there.
Great. So Rashba says, I got to find it again. Zeomer shel avotai v'zeomer shel avotai ben besfina ben bekarka vein edut v'chazaka lezeh yoter mizeh. So there's no, again, similar. Well, lots of cases we've been dealing with. There's no other proof out there, and both of them are claiming that they've inherited something from.
Well, but then there's a key point here. The Rashi is saying they don't have. Neither one has a greater claim than the other. They could, in other words, the Rashba is pointing out they could both have edut, or they could both have chazaka, but they cancel each other out. They each have the exact equivalent amount of proof, and therefore we're left in a quandary.
So, good. Amar Rav Nachman, Kol Dalim Gavar. Right. So Rav Nachman throws it back to the case we had with the Sfina, or the Arba, we called it. In the previous case, that it's the court stays out of it. I'll translate it, and then they fight it out on their own. So
exactly.
All right. But then we have a question. Right, but we have another case, right, where you have two. I'll read the Rashba and Rashbam in a second here, right? Two documents which that I would say that are dated on the same date, or take effect on the same date, something like that is maybe a translation. In fact, he says, I'll just read the Rashbam. Mishnei shtarot hayotzim lefanenu al sadeh achat shel Ruven shekatav shtar matana leShimon ushtar matana leVi ushnehem biyom echad. Right. So
wait a second. First of all, it's a matana. First, that's a key point, that it's a matana. It's a star that I'm gifting you this field. And he writes one to Levi and one to Shimon. This is like if sometimes it happens like I think there's like some story of a king who he wrote a will that says, you, son number one, you inherit my kingdom. And then he wrote another will to son number two, you inherit my kingdom. Because he didn't want either one, if you would say this, he didn't want either one to feel bad. So he gave it to both of them. Now they have to fight it out. Their problem.
I don't know, should I read the rest of the Rashba, or can I just summarize
Yes.
the whole?
No, read the rest.
The whole thing? Okay. All right, we'll do it. What's another V?
Well, no, not all of it, but just keep reading a little more.
Okay.
Vafilu.
ואפילו מתברר ששמעון בשחר ולוי אחריו בערב, ein hakdama b'shaot ele b'Yerushalayim, right? So we have a principle, even if we know, we can determine that one of them got the star in the morning and one in the evening. If it's on the same day, right? We don't judge things based on which hour it came first. If it was on the same day, with the exception of Yerushalayim documents, which have a specific,
Exactly. So we're going to forget about the rest of the Rashbam, but
okay.
That's the key point here. In other words, so what's the key point? That doesn't, in other words, the star itself says, January or September 14th or whatever. So they're both September 14th. And so there's no way to say which star is better. And you're going to bring me witnesses that say, yeah, but this one he signed in the morning and this one he signed in the afternoon. We're going to throw those witnesses out. It doesn't matter. Those witnesses are irrelevant. In other words, we have our witnesses. Our witnesses is this star, and whatever it says, that determines the case. There's no more witnesses that could possibly come. It's a final document. So we don't want to don this case. We don't want to judge this case because there's nothing we can say. Asher, you want to ask something?
Yeah, I want to ask, is there halachically a difference if you have the case of a person who gave two shtarot on the same day to different people? Is there a difference halachically if he did it intentionally, like the case you gave, or if he did it because he just forgot or was confused?
No, not really. No. Well, I mean, no. Well, we're going to see a possible answer that deals with the question of who he liked better, perhaps. And there he may have not done it intentionally. He may have actually wanted to give to one of them. But I gave a case where he intentionally wanted to make this confusion, which is a funny right. Case. But,
that's why I was asking. That's why I was wondering though if it's different if it was somebody who just got.
I don't think it's really different, but we're going to see that there is an opinion that you just try to determine who he probably meant to give it to. But go on, Joel.
I'm unmuted. Great. Okay. And in that case, we have two opinions, right? In the case of the two shtarot that hayatzim b'yom echad, the Rav amar yachloku, right? Rav says split it. Ushmol amar shuda d'daine, right? He says I'm literally the casting it of the judges or to judge, right? But it's I'll read the Rashbam on that because it's
yeah. Well, first of all, before you get to the Rashbam, it's almost the both of them are really saying kind of the same thing, which is in this case where no witnesses come along, are we going to say called the Alim Gavar? No, we're not going to say called Alim Gavar. No, we are going to get involved. We are going to take this case up. But why? We can't possibly determine, anything here. There's no witnesses that could come. Actually, this kind of lends support to the Rashbam's idea that called the Alim Gavar is when you could bring more witnesses. Because here's a case where we can't bring any more witnesses. There's no possibility of witnesses coming because this is I guess you could say theoretically there could be some kind of witnesses, but we're assuming that there's no witnesses, that we've reached the end. We did what we call mitsui hadin. In other words, we've exhausted all possible avenues, and now we are going to get involved. So why do we say why we're going to get involved? Either we're going to do cholek or we're going to do shuda d'daine. But why don't we just say, let's not get involved? Why should we get involved? There's nothing to decide here. So first of all, let's explain what yachloku is and what shuda d'daine is. So read those two Rashbams.
Yeah, look, Rashbam, I think, right? Yeah, yachloku. Right. This is actually very similar to the Rashi at the very beginning of Bava Metzia, right? They'll split it because it's a sfeika, and there's no right. We can't say because they both have equal chazakot on this thing. So,
but wait, in the case of the talis of Bava Metzia of our Gemara, that's also safek.
Mm-hmm.
So why?
And it's the same thing, right? Yachloku, right? In that case, that Rav is following the dean of our Gemara.
Right. So, okay, fine.
I mean, we could make arguments. Is it Yachloku with Shvua and all that stuff? Maybe it is different, but
Right there. Well, here would it make sense Shavua? Not really, because there was nothing. He just is he's a victim of this guy's matanot. He has nothing to swear about.
Yeah. I would say we have documents in this case, right? It's a very
We have
different
documents, right?
This is gonna be the whole thing we're gonna end up on is that there's nowhere to go from here, right? In terms of the documents, right? There's no
Right.
further proof. Well, kind of, we'll see. Because there should have dedaine, right? Le'otosh yenoter lev hadayanim shayanoten ohavo okrovo yoter. Right, so it's that the dayanim see that there's a tendency that maybe the person who gave the shtar is closer to one of them, or is either be the relative or loves one of them more. Right, they're more likely to have wanted to deed this property to one of those two people.
Right.
So,
Now, there are some people who say that shoda daini actually means, whatever the judges want to do, but the Rashbam is saying no, it's not. It's the judges have to estimate who is more dear to the heart of this giver. Who did he probably intend to give it to? And they're trying to estimate who is more likely to be the right one and give it to him.
So,
Should
I keep going with it, or
no? You can skip that.
Okay. So,
there's another Rashi, Shuda Lashon. Well, that's not important. Okay.
Yeah, that's just like why do we use the term shuda, right?
Yeah. So now we're going to get the answer. Wait, what's the question?
So the question is why, in the case of Zesh Omer Shalav, one says this is my father's, one says this is my father's, right? We use Kol De'alim Gavar, but in this case of the two competing documents from the same day, we don't say Kol De'alim Gavar. We either say Yachloku or we say Shuda Dedaine, and not.
And in both cases, there's Keilu equal. Sad say it's for either. Both of them have sort of equal claims.
So, and so the answer of the Gemara is Hatam being the case of the two shtarot, right? The milta, right? There's no way to determine the truth, I'll say, or something like that, right? In fact, there is no truth, but they both got documents, right? At the end of the day, in some ways. So, the milta, right? But here, right, in the case where both of them are claiming that their father had this land, then there is you can go further with the case, right? There's more.
Right. There's the possibility of somebody, raking the mud and bringing out some new witnesses in the one case, and in the other case, there's no. And in the case of the shtar, there's no possibility of anything ever coming. So, okay, that is a difference. Why does that difference give us our different din, our different dinning? Aaron, you have a question or comment?
This gets brought as a kasha on the Rivaz position, but shouldn't this also be a kasha on Rabbeinu Tam's position, insofar as if the difference between a Yachloku case and a Kol De'alim Gavar case was as Rabbeinu Tam described it, wouldn't the Gemara here give that answer?
Well, what would they be muhzak for?
They're both like sort of holding the land by having. It's just like it is a fairly similar setup with a totally different resolution.
No, because the shtar is not being held. The shtar is is in the Beit Din's possession. It's not the shtar has no value. It's just a registry. It's like you registered with the city hall who owns the land. So, I mean, not necessarily. I don't think the shtar is itself the item. The shtar is the proof that you own the item. It's not the item, right?
But
the item is the matana, and neither of them are holding the matana.
Right, but if it's not like the talus, then it should have maybe a different dean of not Yaslok. Then they would have to explain why
Exactly.
Is that Yaslok.
So yes, so you have to say that there are other factors also. There are other possible reasons. There are other factors. There's other parameters that will give us the same din of Yachloku. And as Rabbeinu Tam was explaining the difference between those two cases, but he's not saying that that's the only possible case where you'd have Yachloku. I agree with you. The Gemara is like giving us now more parameters for when to determine a case to be Yachloku, even if you're not muhzak, but what? But you have done what I call mitsui hadin. In other words, every possible avenue of witnesses or proofs has been exploited, and there's no reason to wait till Eliyahu Hanavi, or there's no reason to let them fight it out. We can decide. So again, but still, I have an idea. I have a theory about why we're doing this, but I think
But it's also the talus is also a case where there's leka lemekam ala demilta, so he could have just used that resolution.
Well, I think the tallest you could, right? You could bring witnesses that that one person, had it, picked it up first, and the other tried to snatch it from him or something like that. There is, right? It's not actually like an error where there's really completing claims that no one is better than the other, right? It's like you have
I
two
think it's an
documents.
excellent right. I think it's an excellent question, and what Joel is saying is what you have to say. You have to say that, but I think your question was well taken. In other words, it seems quite similar. It seems like maybe over there was no witness, no possibility of witness. Maybe they were doing it. It was in private. If there were witnesses, why didn't the Mishnah say if there were witnesses? Maybe. But I think you have to say no. There, for whatever reason, that's not called mitzuya din. There's still some avenues that are possible over there. But we don't. But well, it's also that they have possession. So that also gives us certain reason to divide it. I'm saying there's another parameter, right? Let's skip in this middle of this Rashbam, Hatam. The first word on the line that I want you to start at is Dehoil.
All right.
That's kind of right in the middle of the Rashbam of the Hatam. It's quite long. I don't want to read it all. Dehoil.
Dehoil ve'im levarer leolam hadin im mi mishtadlin beitin bedinan v'daninoto, right? Since you can't clarify ever, right? It's impossible to clarify the deen. So who does the Beit Din, I guess, work?
No, I think it means. I think I would translate it. It's a little bit hard. I think it's impossible to barer with whom the din of the Beit Din would go. Now, with whom the final psak that would go, which way they would decide. It's impossible to determine which way they would decide. And therefore, v'daninoto, bedinan v'daninoto, avalhacha, go on.
Okay, avalhacha b'hai karka, right? Teleka lo shtar v'lo edim, v'ikol mekam ale demilta, im yavo v'ya'idu shal mihu, hilkach ein kan lomar chaluka v'shuda, right? Deshama yavo edim, v'yisteru et adin shedanu beitin. Right. So, but in the other case, right, in the case of the karka where we say kol de'alim gavar, right, where they both say it belongs to Abba, right, there it's possible that the Beit Din, here I see what the Beit Din can judge it, and then let's say they say yachloku, and then Adim will come and they'll essentially they will go against contradict the Beit Din. That's the word I'm looking for. They'll contradict the Beit Din, and it turns out the Beit Din was wrong. So
right. Wait, keep reading.
I gotta find where I was again.
Istaruta Beit Din, Shadanu Beit Din, Hilchach, Ein Beit Din is Kakin Lahan, Ladun Din, Shesofoliv. In other words, what does it mean, Beit Din Ein Niz Kakin? That's an expression that you have to know. Niz Kakin Lahan. In other words, it literally means we don't need them. But what it means is we're not obligated to them. We have no obligation to them. We're not going to get involved. You guys can. We're not going to judge your case. That in the end we're going to just come up with a wrong answer potentially. Ella manichim otam. We just tell them go on your way. So what is this? This is a very important principle, I think here. What is this principle? Basically, it's so obvious. I mean, we just said it, but
I think if the Beit Din has a possibility of getting it wrong, and someone can show that they got it wrong, the Beit Din stays out of it.
Right, we don't want to embarrass ourselves. The number one thing that the Beit Din has to worry about is maintaining the respect of the Beit Din in the eyes of the people. So, in a case where we might decide to divide it, and then somebody comes along and says, "Oh, it's my land. Look, here's the proof." Then the Beit Din looks foolish. We want the Beit Din psak to be kind of irrevocable. So when there's a possibility of Edim coming, and there's no, then we don't have what I call mitzui hadin. We don't have the full exhaustion of all possible checks, of all possible determinations. Then we're not going to get. If we don't have that, then we're not going to get involved. But if we do have, if we've exhausted, and there's no possibility of witnesses, then it's up to us to decide. Then we're going to have to take on the take the ram by the horns and decide the din, and we're not going to worry that maybe we're wrong, because even if we're wrong, we'll never know. Nobody will ever know. A good bait, like a good doctor buries his mistakes. A good bait din, his mistakes
Avoids
are
them.
also what?
Avoids the mistakes.
Avoid, yeah, exactly. We don't allow mistakes to appear. If there's going to be a possibility of us being caught, and there's a term which is, we don't want to make the bait din, what it's called chochav ve'itlula, which means a laughing stock, basically. We don't want the bait din to become a laughing stock. Yeah, Yavni?
Jessica had her hand up first.
Oh, Jessica.
I was just going to say, sorry about the background noise, I'll sort this out for next week. But is it possible to read it as them trying not to overreach their authority rather than just trying not to look foolish? It's the same din, but it feels like a different motivation potentially.
Overreach their authority? Maybe, but where would you? How do you see that?
As in, this is a case which is impossible for the Beit Din to adjudicate because they just don't have the information. So it goes beyond the authority of the earthly Beit Din potentially.
No, but in both cases,
they
they don't have the information, and in one case they do adjudicate, in one case they don't. In both cases they don't know. Are you saying because there could be more information out there? No, they don't have the information. In the case where they do divide it, or they also don't have the information, but there cannot be any information. There's no information to be had.
Yeah, exactly.
They could also be wrong there. They could also be wrong, but it's just his point is though. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think it would be a different explanation than the Rashbam is saying. I think it's a possible explanation, but it's not at least what the Rashbam is saying. Because he says v'yisteru et dinam shedanu beitin. In other words, because he's afraid that they'll contradict. There's going to be some contradiction going on to what the Beis Din said, so therefore they don't want to get involved. That's the way I see it. But yeah, you could say like you're saying what you're saying is a valid way to understand. Yavni?
And also just to be clear, and then the one case where they do, even though they don't have the information and there might be information out there that will come in the future, but they do get involved, is the Shnai Mochazin Betalit.
And that's because of the Chazaka. That's because
right,
they're holding.
So, but then why is that relevant? Maybe it's because like they have a situation that they have to resolve it. Because I don't know, like why is that? Why does that make a difference? That they have evidence, so they have some evidence, but they don't. But there could still be more evidence out there. Like it's still.
So here's my explanation after much thinking about this question. It's that in the case of the palace, they both picked it up at close to the same time. We're dealing with reasonable people, right? If they both have it, if one guy picked it up an hour before the other one, then he brought it home and it's done. They obviously picked it up pretty much at the same time. So what witnesses would come? I would almost say there is Mitsui Hadin really, because even if witnesses would come, what would they say? Oh no, we saw it was really him. Well, we know that eyewitnesses are not 100% reliable. So even if witnesses would come, maybe we wouldn't rely on them. Maybe we would rely on them. But the Beit Din doesn't seem foolish because it was a close call. In other words, it was a close call. And it's also, we're going to see another idea, which is, it was a close call. And both people kind of feel that they'll have respect for the din. They'll have respect for the din that the Beis Din gave, because even though I think I got it first, I could see how a reasonable observer might have thought the other guy got it first. So I'm not going to be annoyed with the din. But by the boats, let's say, where you're not satisfied with this.
I'm not satisfied, but I have another idea. But go ahead.
Yeah. In other words, that's a couple of these. But go ahead. What do you want to say?
I was going to say, I wonder if, because the case that we're looking at here, the case that I'm looking at is the contrasting, or one of the contrasting cases is like Ze Omer Avotai v'Ze Omer Shel Avotai, in which case they're like, isn't even the possibility that it's actually both of theirs, right? Like with the Talit, there's the possibility that it's supposed to, and it somehow feels relevant, but doesn't fit into how we've been arguing it.
Well, we're about to ask
this Tosfot.
Right. That's the whole point in the Tosfot. Well, not the whole point. One of the main criterion in the Tosfot on 2a.
Right. But I guess my question is, how does that fit in? We just made like a pretty general statement about like what the court is avoiding, and it doesn't seem to quite fit in. Like seems to be a slightly different, like an additional thing going on.
Well, there's definitely more factors involved. But I think that in the case of the talis, we're on the one hand less concerned that witnesses will come because, and even because it's less likely. And secondly, the chalukah that we're doing there is a little bit more reasonable than the chalukah, let's say, of like it's my I say it's my father, and I say, in other words, that's very clear cut. When you say the land is mine and the other one says no, the land is mine, so it's either one or the other. But in the case of the talis, it really could be that they both brought it up at the same time, even though one thinks that he brought it up first, and the other thinks he lifted up first. But it could have been that they both made an honest mistake and they interpreted the event in their own favor, but really they took it up simultaneously. So the din that we're coming to is, first of all, it's possible. It's a real possibility, as opposed to this case where there's the shtar, where there's complete mitsui hadin, and we're coming up with an impossible din also, right? It's impossible that the matana should go to both of them, half and half. But there, we're willing to do it because there's no other alternative. There's no possibility of us being refuted. In the case of the talis, it could be refuted. But at least what we did was in the realm of possible things, and the Beit Din won't look foolish if we got it wrong. Let's say witnesses come and say, no, the other one got it first. So we say, okay, we got it wrong, but our din was still right. Our din was still right, that if you had brought it up at the same time, we would have been to divide. So we're not foolish now. You see what I'm saying? But in the case of the fathers, it's impossible that it could be both of theirs. The land of both fathers. So we're doing something, we're only coming to that conclusion because we know that there's not going to be anything coming further. So we got to divide it up somehow. But I agree with you. These are all different cases, and they're all different reasons why we come up with these dinim. But wait, what should we do here now? There's just one more case.
Gotta get to Gerard to the Mamona, right?
Yeah, go back to the Gemara.
The goal, right?
Can I just jump in here on this last point though? I think that the last like few words of the Rashbam are kind of significant, where he says, "Ela manichin otan v'chol dalim gvar ad sheyavo edim v'yivarer hadavar." So there, it's almost like they're not confident that they've done all of the dredging up of witnesses, and so then we have to, come up with another solution that's more hands off. So it's almost, I was wondering whether some of this is about like temporal differences. So there's something about saying, oh, this was my father's land, or oh, this is a shtar from like a long time ago that says that I am owed this. And that's different than like watching two people like do a tug of war. Like they're more concerned that witnesses might come out of the woodwork in the Karka case.
Right. There's if witnesses come, what will we do? Then we will judge it.
Then we will judge it, right? So then it's that like
in the Karka case, right? I think in the Karka case, the whole point is that that's the one that we say legale mekamal milta, right? Where we both say that each have a shtar. Part of the idea is like theoretically, you could have like witnesses come and then invalidate one of the shtarot, but like until that happens, I think the idea is that like we think the possibility of that is incredibly low, and so I think the idea is like in the Karka one, we're dafka not waiting for clarification. We dafka think it's incredibly unlikely that we'll ever get any more confirmation than the shtarot.
Mm-hmm. Shtar is the case of the matana, right? And right, isn't that true?
At least according to the Rashbam.
What?
At least according to the Rashbam, yes.
Yeah, shtarot hayotzim b'yom echad, says the Gemara. So that's talking about just a matana. And then the other case is that I said the land is my father's, right? And in the case of the shtarot, the matana, we say there's no possibility of witnesses coming, so we decide the din. But in the case
Right,
of
but
saying
in
it's
the
my father's,
Karka case, they
in the
seem
case
like
of
they are worried that there are witnesses that might come, and that's why they don't decide, is because they don't think they can
exactly. In the
complete
case of
the
the
process.
it's my father's land, then witnesses might come, so we don't want to get involved, so we let them fight it out.
So I
Unless
wondered
witnesses
whether
do come, unless witnesses
what
come.
right. So what I'm
And that's
wondering
the
is
end of the Rashbam there.
what's different about that case is that it is more potentially at least like it's dealing with things that happened longer ago in the past. So it might be harder to find the witnesses, the requisite witnesses, right? Because it's like I have to prove that this guy's father like was muksach on the land somehow.
Saying in the case of the talis, the witnesses are going to probably come right away.
Yeah, like you're not going to find like right, like they're all probably still around because like it's going to be adjudicated like fairly quickly. But this is like I have to go and find this guy's father's, friend who knows that he was there. Like I have to prove that he had a chazaka on the land, and that might have been a while ago.
But I still like the
Presumably,
idea
if there's a dispute, it might be a while ago.
Well, what I'm saying is that there could be a real case of the talis being lifted. That din could be possible of lifting it, of being exactly divided. We're not going to do an impossible din in a case where witnesses can come. We only do an impossible din like the matana, where we divide it up, where there's no other alternative. There's not going to be any witnesses. So then we're willing to get involved in and pronounce a din that is impossible. But
right, I mean that seems like what the
but in a case where witnesses could come, then we'll only pronounce a din if it's a possible scenario. And in the case of the talis, it is a possible scenario, so we'll pronounce a din. But in the case of the land being owned by the two fathers and dividing it is not a possibility. It's not a real possibility. And since witnesses could come, we better not get involved.
Yeah, I mean that seems like the chiluk that the Tosfot are making on our Mishnah, right? But
yeah, those on our Mishnah.
But I'm just wondering whether there's this other way of thinking about it where like it's about the fact that they think they can't find all the witnesses.
I mean, yeah, I still think that in the case of the talis, we don't really think there's going to be witnesses. I don't think we really are hoping for witnesses there. Okay, let's go on to the Gemara.
All right. So Umayshna Meha Ditznan. So all right, we got another case that seems to be a different case than Kol Dalim Gavar. Hamachlif para bechamor v'yalda. V'chein hamocher shivchato v'yalda. Ze omer ad shalom acharti yalda v'ze omer misha lakachti yalda yachloku. Right. So here's a case where you have an exchange, or either between a cow and a donkey, or someone sells a slave, a woman, and she or the animal give birth. And the question is, did it give birth before the sale was actually went into effect, or after the sale went into effect? And they're both arguing that both of them are arguing to their advantage, right? That it happened, on their side, so to speak. And there it's yachloku, right? So why isn't that called dalim gavar? Seems like a similar thing.
I mean, because you're saying it's a case of leichel mekama taima, leichel mekama ala the milta, right? We can't know what happens.
No, it is a case. Well, that's going to be the question, but it seems initially to be a similar case, and nonetheless it's yachloku. I think it's an argument with our avotai case, right? Not with the
second. Right? They could have.
Wait a second. Wait, let me go back a little bit. Hatam the milta. In other words, in when he says hatam, he's talking about the shtei that it was a matana. And I'm going back a little bit. When we said hatam, the leichel mekam ala the time, that was talking about the two shtarot that were of a matana, and we couldn't figure out who was first because they were both on the same date. So in such a case, we are going to get involved. But here we could figure it out, so we're not going to get involved. So now we say Mishna Ditnan Amachli Para Bechamor V'Yalda V'Ken Hamocher Shivchato V'Yalda. Ze Omer Ad Shelo Macharti Yalda V'Ze Omer Misha Lekachti Yalda Yachloku. Here we
look at the Rashba,
here we are going to divide it up.
Exactly. and not say gold that, right? Because Rashma, if you read the Achloku in the Rashma, he says Vahacha di ikal mekam ala demelta im yavo edim v'aidu b'rshut miyada b'rshut miyada v'afilu hachi lo amrin kol dalim gavar v'kasha l'Rav.
So it seems like we could. It seems like we could know this, and yet we're going to still say Yachloku. Maybe our Beis Din is going to look like foolish because we did the wrong din.
So
now we answer.
So it says hatam. So hatam in the case of the machlif or right the macher or macher.
Yeah, of the case of the birth. No.
Lahai itle drara de mamona, right? Ulahu itle drara de mamona, right? So right. So this has a thing called drara de mamona, right? That's the whole question. What that is going to be the question that's going to make a difference here. So maybe I should read or someone should read the Tosfot, I think. So
well, first of all, so drara de mamona.
Actually, I'll keep going. Right. Itle drara de mamona. So each side has.
Let's just translate it a loss of money. Let's just translate it as a loss of money. That's how Rashi translates it on Daf Bet.
Yeah. Yes.
So let's translate it as a loss of money. So here's a case of loss of money. And here's a case, both of them are going to lose money.
So
in which case are they going to lose money?
They're going to lose money if you make the claim one way or the other, right? In other words, if I paid you 50 shekel for a cow, and I got and I should but you got a cow and a baby cow, right? That's not 50 shekels, a khalifa, but so it wasn't worth it. So I lost money.
Whoever we've got this baby calf, whichever way we decide the baby calf is going to go, to which the seller or the buyer, either way, somebody's going to be losing money.
Somebody in theory owned that cow when it was born, and whoever we take, if we assign it to one person, then the other person we might be taking money from them.
Right, we might be somebody owned it at the point at the moment it was born. If we assign it to the wrong one, we might be causing somebody a loss.
Exactly.
And therefore what? And therefore we get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore we do it. It's a little bit funny. Therefore we do divide it up because it's a loss of money. Okay.
I think it's a little more. Well, we'll talk about Drar's Mamona maybe a little bit. Okay, but Ihacha, in our case, right, the Rav Nachman case where it's both claim their father's land. Idamar lo demar, v'idamar lo demar. This is why I don't like Drar Mamona as loss of money. I think it's like a mixed up or both are invested in it is probably a better translation, right? But in the case of the land, it belongs to one or the other, right? And not and so if the right person gets it, so to speak, nobody's lost, I think is the best way to do the Rashi's view of that. So,
well, let's look at
Tosfot, right?
First let's look at the Rashbam.
Does he have something on this? Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah, the previous page, Idamar.
So, good. Should I keep going or
wait?
Hatam. It's at Hatam.
Yeah, Hatam. Sorry, Hatam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Hatam. So in the case of the pregnant cow, Gabe hamachlif para bechamor l'travayo eat lehu drara de mamona. Right. So they both have a loss of money. Well, we'll say what he says. We'll say loss of money for the moment. Shapara v'ashivcha shel shnehem haita. Right. The cow and the shivcha belong to both of them, but ze achar ze, one after the other. V'chol echad v'echad to'em parati v'shivchati yalda. Right? Each claims it happened in my reshut, in my possession, right? And therefore, we're taking away the person's, something that seemed to have been in their possession that could have potentially been theirs. So, all right. Second. Sorry, what was that?
It could be a loss of something that had been possessed at one point.
Yeah,
that might have been in his possession.
So, alternatively, inami b'shat chalipin yalda. Maybe it actually happened at the moment, right? The moment of the exchange. Ve'im levarer shel mi have havalat hilkach yachloku. Or maybe it's like literally a thing that's undecidable, right? It's like or not even undecidable. It's like it kind of belonged to both of them, right? It gave birth as they exchanged it, and it's like it's both of theirs. And so yachloku, that works.
And that's similar to the case of the talit, where I said it could have been that they picked it up at the exact same moment, in which case the din is actually correct.
But it's hard to believe though.
Here also, the
din
could be correct.
pregnant. It's hard to believe they didn't know It's hard to believe they wouldn't know it was. if it's, let's say, the Canaanite slave, it's hard to believe they didn't know she's pregnant, so they know this is going to happen at any time. It's not like they both happen to grab a talit. Oh, it's mine. No, it's mine.
No, but
we know
okay. So the way
the woman is about to pop any day now.
No, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When you buy something, you buy the thing. So if you buy a cow, you bought the cow and everything that's in the cow. And if it's not in the cow, then you didn't get it. You know, if you're right, it's a kind of weird thing. We're saying that it's sort of muvan me'elav, assuming that if it gave birth before even though I saw it was pregnant and I bought it because I wanted a pregnant cow, and then it gave birth a minute before I did the transaction, then everybody agrees that I don't get it. That seems to be the thing. Yeah, because I bought the cow. Unless I specify the cow and it's blood, whether, if I just had the cow, then that seems to be assumed.
Right, but if the cow gives birth right after I bought it, what claim
then
does the
I
seller
own it.
have?
Then that's mine.
Right, then what claim does the seller have? Why is it even an issue?
No, but the problem is, if it's after the birth, then it's for sure the owner, the person who bought it. If it's before the chalifin, before the transaction, then it's the person who's selling it. That seems to be pasha. But what does it mean exactly at the shah chalifin? So the way when you do chalifin, that what happens is the one person pulls, let's say, the chamor, and now at the moment I take the chamor, the para that I own is now yours. He doesn't have to pull the para. The minute I pull the one transaction, I pull the chamor, now the para is yours. So it could be at that exact moment it gave birth, the moment that I'm pulling it. And furthermore, it could be that the cow is like far away, which is things we're going to say. The cow can be far away. So when I pull the chamor, I don't even know if the cow gave birth, and nobody knows. We're both over here next to the chamor, and I'm pulling the chamor from you, and the cow is out there and grazing in the field. So and maybe there's no witnesses, so we have no idea when it gave birth. And we go to the cow, we see a baby right by it, so we don't know when it happened. Did it happen at the moment I pulled Did it happen the moment before I pulled, or the moment after I pulled that donkey? Nobody knows, and maybe it's unknowable. Or maybe there happened to be. And the truth is, I would even claim that if it's far enough away, it's unknowable, because unless you have an atomic clock, how would you know exactly when the two events happened? You'd have to have witnesses. See what I'm saying? Even if there were witnesses that saw it giving birth, they wouldn't know exactly when I pulled the donkey. But what he's saying is that it's drara de mamona because both of them are potentially losing it, because it either happened this way or that way, or it happened simultaneously, in which case actually this chalukah would be correct. And I'll skip Joel to the next Rashbam.
Idamar lo damar.
Yeah.
Idamar lo damar. Lo aita karkal she'idach me'olam. Right. It never belonged to the other guy. Right. So in other words, it always belonged to one of them at the end of the day. So
right. In other words, the land of the case of the guy who says it's my father's, the other guy says no, it's my father's. So it's only one of theirs land. It's not. It's only one of them is correct. So I'm not necessarily causing and this gets us into this idea of having as what you call in Hebrew a zikah to the land, having some kind of connection to the land. In other words, one of them is for sure a liar. One of them is, that's what we're assuming, kind of. That's what he's saying. We're saying lo haita karka shel idach me'olam. He has a false claim. One has a true claim, one has a false claim. Here, they both have a kind of reasonable claim. And this is what I'm going back to the idea what I said about the talis when somebody asked about like what's in the mind of the litigants. And I think that in other words, the litigants are kind of satisfied with a compromise here, because they both have a connection. They both admit that they each had a kind of connection to this calf. One says, well, I bought it, so really it's mine. The other says, yeah, I admit that you kind of had a connection to it also, because I know that you owned it a minute ago. So when the Beis Din comes and says it's a compromise, you get 50-50, it doesn't make the Beis Din look so foolish, because both people kind of respect the other one's claim. But in the claim of I just say that my father had it, So I know you're a liar. So if the Beit Din gives you half, I'm very resentful of the Beit Din. Why did the Beit Din do that? Or in the case of the boat, imagine if we would say in the case of the boat, we're going to divide 50-50. Some random guy comes up and says, this boat is mine. And then it's really mine. It's really somebody else's. And he says mine. And I go to Beit Din, and now the Beit Din awards me half of the boat. And I go back to my friends and say, can you believe that foolish Beit Din? They should be the Beit Din of Chelm. They gave me the boat and they just said it was mine. I had no hazaka, I had nothing. I just said it's mine, and they gave me 50%. But here, I was the owner of that cow a minute ago, or you were the owner of, and so maybe I should get, maybe I'm right. And the other guy says, well, do I really know when this happened? So they both have a kind of a claim, even though maybe the reality is that it really happened, before or after, and we don't know. But both of them have a kind of legitimate claim. So it doesn't make the Beit Din seem embarrassed. And again, that's what I'm saying. The underlying thing is we don't want the Beit Din to be embarrassed. We want a din that the litigants feel is reasonable din. Because it could be the Metzia. It could have been what happened. And even if it, because it could have been at the same, like he says, Inami, perhaps it was exactly the moment of the Chalifin. And that's what so look at this Tosfos here. Would somebody like to read the Tosfos in the negative 1 minute that we have?
Summarize it in 1 minute, but it's
there's a Tosfos here on Drora de Mamon. Yavni, why don't you look at that? Drora de Mamon. You don't have to translate. You can just read.
Sorry, on where? On Lamed. On
Lamed.
למד ה' עמוד ב', דרר דממון הפירוש דדל טענותיי הוא מהכה, יש ספק לבית דין.
That's the key point. Perush means, dedal means without. Without their claims, mehacha, yesh safek lebeit din dahai. In other words, even if they wouldn't say anything, we would have a doubt about this case.
Right.
The two guys would just come and say, I don't know when this cow was born. Right? I don't know what happened here. So, based on you decide.
Right.
In other words, it's sort of like a theoretical, it's like a question the base sort of wants to answer because it's a theoretical question that sort of begs to be answered. What is the case when it happens exactly at the moment of Chalifin? If it happened exactly at the moment, so what's the case? So that's why I'm explaining it. That we want to answer this question without, whereas in the other case, so go on. The whose should it be? Havla.
אם נולד קודם שמחר או לאחר שמחר. וכן בשור שנגח את הפרה ונמצא עוברה בצידה. Similar, it's also true for the case of a ox that gored a cow, and we find the cow with the ubar next to it. בנות הענתה מסופקים בית דין, איך היה מעשה, אם קודם שנגחה ילדה או לאחר שנגחה. Even without any claims, the Beit Din has a question: which came first, the goring or the birth? וכן בשור רודף אחר שור, אחר שור אחר והוזק, יש להסתפק אם בשורו הוזק או בסלע לקה. וכן בכל מקום דפליגי רבנן וסומכוס. אבל הכה, בזה אומר של אבותיי, שעל פי טענותיהן בא הספק אמרינן כל דאלים גבר.
In other words, when there's a real metziut, let me summarize it. When there's a metziut, there's a reality that is an unclear reality, then the Beit Din should get involved. But when some two crazy guys just come to us and give claims with no basis, then we throw them down the stairs. We're not going to deal with a case where two people come and just say, I say it's mine, I say it's mine. Well, I have no proof. You have no, we have no proof, or we have equal proofs. So we're not going to get involved. It's your problem. But when there's the mitziut is begging us to solve it, and I would even add that it's a theoretical question that even if it's not relevant for this particular case, because really, we find out later, witnesses come and say when it exactly happened, fine. But still, the case is a real possibility. It's a possibility that it happens simultaneously. And we have to decide that case, what to do in such a case. So, and the Beit Din can say, well, we didn't know it happened. It doesn't make us look foolish. You say, now the witnesses came. It was, and it wasn't simultaneous, fine. So you do a different chalukah. But what we said is still a valid psak din, because it could be such a case.
This is a nice explanation.
Simultaneous.
This is a nice explanation. What does it have to do with the words drara de mamona?
So drara de mamona, according to Tosfos, or according to, and according to really, I would say even according to the Rashba, doesn't mean losing money. It means a zikah. They had a connection to the item. In other words, in the case of the cow, both people have they have what we call in legal terminology a standing. They have legal standing in the case. If I come to a building and I say, you left cigarettes in the hall of the building, I'm going to sue you. I say, well, do you live in the building? No. Well, then you have no standing. You can't sue. You can't just go to random buildings and say, I don't like the fact that people are leaving cigarettes in these halls. But if you live there, then you have standing. Whoever has to go, thank Shana Tova. But let me just, So, so I have no problem if you have to leave. But here, so I would say, so drora de mamon means you could almost translate it as my money is invested in this matter. I have invested money, but really the way connecting is I'm connected to this case. I have some kind of zikah to this case, and actually this is explained in the I think in the Ketzos HaChosh. Anyway, there are achronim that discuss exactly this point and say that the idea is zikah, is I have some connection, I have some shayachut to this animal, as opposed
I don't quite
to
see how that has to do with this whole argument about whether there's a question in a question for the Beit Din. Anyway, whatever.
No, because I have. You're saying how does it fit with what I'm saying? I'm saying that question for the Beit Din, whether
right.
Well, because I have standing, because I'm connected to these items, the Beit Din wants to get involved. But when the Beit Din just hears statements that I just say, I got this, that boat is mine, or this land is mine, and I have no proof, or my proof is refuted by somebody else's proof, that as far as we're concerned, you have no zikah to the item, you have no real connection to the item, and therefore you have no standing, and therefore we're not going to get involved in the case. That's the way I'm connecting it. If it's not a relevant it's not a matter that we want to take up if it's something that you aren't really connected to or have no proof that you're connected to. But I was adding another point, which is that there are cases where the din is an interesting din anyway. It's a theoretical possibility. All right. Anyway, I was trying to get to this idea that the underlying principle here is when the Beit Din will be made, to look like they've done something crazy or unacceptable, and maintaining the honor of the Beit Din. Anyway, shkar to everybody. Next class we'll have to tell you when it is and what it is. Shana Tova to everybody.
Wait, so are we? Yeah, when are we meeting again?
I'm not sure. So I have to check. I sent out an email about it, but now I want to check my email so I don't say the wrong thing.
Great.
Okay. All right.
We all soon.